Well, good evening. How's everyone doing tonight? I'm doing pretty good, by the way. I don't know why, just no particular reason, just feeling good. Anyway, glad you guys are here. I'm Lee Love, and this is Photo Mentor TV. We're here every Friday night at 9 p.m. Eastern and 6 p.m. Pacific. And of course, if you're a night owl and have insomnia, then we're at available at 0200 Greenwich Mean Time or Universal Coordinated Time. So anyway, glad you guys are here. Tonight we got a good show. Got some stuff we're going to go over, some question and answers you guys have submitted. And of course, I encourage you to submit some additional questions if you have them and you'd like to do that. Just be sure, just put them in the comment section of your YouTube or Facebook. You can get there by going to youtube.photomentor.tv or facebook.photomentor.tv, and that'll take you directly to one of those pages, and you can leave a comment there. Love to hear from you. Let's see here. What else? Again, if this is the first time here, the purpose of this show is to answer questions, mainly for new photographers, but of course, any photographer is welcome to ask any questions they'd like. And but the reason is I get frustrated at seeing either bad information or wrong information or myths repeated over and over in a lot of groups and forums and things like that. And this is my attempt to try and straighten that out and give you some real world answers from a real world photographer. I'm a commercial photographer, been doing this a long time. And so my answers will come from what my experience have. I don't know everything, but if I don't know it, I can find out for you. And so anyway, if you love what we're doing here, we'd appreciate that you'd like the Facebook page and of course the YouTube channel. Share that with your friends or subscribe. That would be terrific. I'd really appreciate it. It would mean a lot to me. I'd be very grateful. So before we get started, I have a question of the week. This question of the week is, what's your favorite photo that you've ever taken and why? Now, this doesn't have to be an amazing image. Doesn't have to be a great image. It just has to be one that you like. It could be, you could have shot it with your phone or your favorite camera or whatever, but I'd just be curious to see what is your favorite image and why you liked it. So post that in the comments section. I'd love to see what kind of images you guys like, or the kind of images you think are your favorites. If you want to post the image in there, that'd be great too. Not necessary if you don't want to. All right, let's look at some questions tonight. The first one comes from Bri, and Bri wants to know, she's looking for a sharp quality camera, and she wants to know if it's really the issue is a digital sensor and megapixels, or what she's looking for. Well, in other words, what is the issue that makes up a really sharp, image? It's a little bit of a complicated question because it's not just one or the other. But let me give you the best answer I can and see if this helps. First of all, it's a little of both. The first thing is if you're going to be working in an image, depending on the size of the image that you're going to be printing or publishing, then the megapixels have a lot to do with it. Okay, that's going to give you a finer detail. But I have seen 10 megapixel images or 12 megapixel images that look stunning. So it's not just the megapixels. The other myth is that people think, if you're going to do a billboard, you got to have a lot of megapixels. Actually, it's the opposite. Large prints like billboards and things like that actually are lower resolution because the dots are bigger because you're looking at them further away. So it's not a high resolution image. Most of the time it's a low resolution image. So the thing you're looking for though is a combination of megapixels and lens quality. The lens is really going to make the biggest difference because you could have the best, you could have a Hasselblad or Leica or whatever, and if you put a lousy lens in front of it, the images are just not going to be sharp. Also got to make sure if you're going to put a filter in front of that lens, that's got to be a good quality filter. So those are two of the attributes that have to do with making up a sharp image and something that you need to think about. There's a third thing that sort of a third and fourth thing that I'll add that kind of are important that you need to think about. So one of the things that the biggest problem I see with people, they bring me a camera or a photo and they say, this thing, this camera was working great, but now it's not, and I think there's something wrong with the camera. Can you look at it? And I'll say, well, show me some of the images. And the biggest issue that most people have with sharp images is the shutter speed. Your shutter speed has to be fast enough to freeze the movement, or it's not going to be a sharp image. Again, you could have the best lens in the world, but if you're shooting at 1/20th of a second or slower, handheld, it's not going to be very sharp. I say 1/20th, yeah, 1/20th of it, not 1/20, but 20th of a second. So, anyway, 1/20 is what I was trying to describe. So the thing is, before you think your images or there's a problem with your camera, put your camera on a tripod and, with good lighting, and set it up and take, or if you don't have a tripod, use something really sturdy, a table or something, set it on a self-timer so you're not touching it, and take some pictures that way. One test you can do is just put up a piece of newspaper. Focus, make sure it's not, it's far enough away that you're not at the minimum focusing distance of the lens, but about 10 feet away or so. And then go through the focusing of hey Gabe, then go through the focusing or the aperture of the lens. So start at the widest lens opening, let's say it's 3.5, shoot an image there, go to f4, 5.6, f8, etc. And what you're going to find is every lens has a sweet spot where there's a place where the lens is sharper at some point than the other. Generally speaking, just for the most part, on average lenses, it's around f8 to f11 are the best places. So those are going to be the sharpest parts of the lens. And it's just an optics issue. It's just the way the optics of the lens camera and camera works. I won't go into all the details because it's really geeky, but that's the thing. So there's two. So here's the analogy I use. So pretend you're looking at a laser and you're aiming a laser at your hand. Okay, you could have a little bit of movement. You could be a little movement. You'll see a little bit of movement of the laser, but if that laser is pointing at something 30 feet away, then any little movement's going to show up like about a foot. So that has to do with the focal length of the lens. So the longer the lens, like a 200 millimeter lens, you need to shoot at a faster shutter speed. So the rule of thumb that I tell people is you want to be shooting double the focal length. So in other words, if you're shooting at a 200 millimeter lens and you're handheld, then you want to be shooting at least at 1/450th, 500th of a second, double what the focal length. If you're shooting a 50 millimeter lens, then you can get by with shooting at 100 or 1/25th of a second. If you're shooting a 35 millimeter lens, you can even afford to shoot at a slower shutter speed. And the reason is the depth of field has a lot to do with it. There's more depth of field in a wider angle lens. And also, it's that movement, as I said, with the laser analogy, is not going to show up. So, Bri, unfortunately, there's a little more to it than just, oh, you got to use this camera or that camera. It's not just that. Obviously, the higher, in fact, not to dwell on this issue, but what happens is the higher at some point, the high resolution becomes a detriment. So, in other words, if you're shooting 36, 42, 50 megapixel cameras, you actually have to shoot at a faster shutter speed to get a sharper image, because those megapixels actually will accentuate the camera shake. So that's why there's a kind of a sweet spot. Most cameras are around 24 megapixels. The average consumer camera, 24, 30, around 24 to 50, 40 megapixels. And that's why, because that has a balance between the best low light and also the sharpest image. So I hope that helps. Apologize for going too geeky on you here, but it's just not a simple question. So anyway, I want to say hello to my buddy Gabe Taviano. Hi Gabe, how you doing? Gabe is an old friend of mine. We haven't talked in a decade, probably at least. It's nice to see you, Gabe. Gabe is an amazing graphic designer who is someone that I started teaching photography to, and he really made me mad because he picked it up so quick and he became a great photographer. And it, where guys like me have to struggle. And the reason is this is what I preach to people. The reason is because he knew design, he knew composition, he knew white space and how to compose a picture. And that's really the key. It's not about the technical aspects of the camera or what you're using or which camera, how many megapixels. It's understanding composition. So, anyway, so hello, Karen. How you doing? Nice to have you join us. So anyway, what's Gabe saying? Gabe here is also saying he's going to be getting ready to upgrade. I think he moved from a Nikon to a Sony, if I'm not mistaken. Last time I talked to him, or last time I kind of followed what he was doing. So anyway, it's great seeing you guys on here. I really appreciate it. And Gabe, you need to reach out to me though, buddy, and tell me what's going on, and if you're still doing graphic design, because might be able to send you some work. I could use somebody with your ability. So, all right, let's see what else we got. And hello, Karen. Good evening. So let's see here. All right, so hope that answered that question. Next question is from Oliver, and Oliver asks, "What tips can you give me when shooting night photography?" Well, first tip is get some light. Night photography is a bear, and there's a lot of things going on there. One of them is the fact that you have low light, so you're having to shoot at typically higher ISOs, and you're having to shoot at slower shutter speeds, and so therefore the movement is going to be difficult for getting a sharp picture. Now, you can use that movement to your advantage. I mean, we've all seen light streaks, pictures of cars going by with the light streaks. You can use that to your advantage. But I would say if there was one tip I had to give you, it has to be you have to have a really steady movement. If you can use a tripod, great. Most people don't. They don't want to carry one around if they're doing night photography. But if you can, that's the ideal thing. And then the other thing I will tell you is there's a technique you can use for holding your camera that will make it really steady. Actually, I can show you this real quick. Wasn't planning on doing this. So it works best with longer lenses, but it's going to look kind of geeky. I'll see if I can get this to you. So what you want to do is you want to take your hand and you want to put your arm right over here, over this right here. Okay, so you're trying to make a tripod is what you're trying to do. So you want to put your camera right here in this little crook of your arm. Okay, and then you reach this other arm around. Sorry about that. And you grab it, and then you bring this up to your face, and you hold it against your face, okay? Now, I know it looks kind of weird, and you'll get people ask. I used to shoot a lot of concerts. I had people ask me, what is that thing you were doing with your arms? Well, I could shoot at 1/15 of a second and get a nice steady picture by using that technique because there's no movement. If you notice, you don't have, see with this, you have too many axes to move it on. Where if you do it like this, you can't. Now, the problem is if you have a zoom lens, you have to move your hand to zoom it and then go back. But it's a technique you can use that would really be very helpful if you can try that out. So anyway, hopefully that helps with Oliver a little bit. There's a bunch of techniques you can use, but really the trick is having a steady handheld effect or tripod or something like that, and then that makes a big difference. And if you have a camera that can shoot at a little bit slightly higher ISOs, that's better too. So Gabe has another question here. He says, we're looking at 60 megapixels that's a lot. I think it is. I think 60 megapixels is pretty excessive. It's not real practical. It's the file size I don't worry about. Like people say, oh, the files are huge. I don't care about the file size, and the reason is the disk space is the cheapest thing we spend money on as photographers. Now it does take a little bit better computer, but I think the sweet spot's around 40 or 50. Now, if I were shooting medium format, I mean, I was looking at 100 megapixel Fuji. That would be different, but that's a different kind of camera. That's not street camera. That's something I'll be using in the studio on a tripod or something that's really steady. So I don't know. I'd try and maybe if you can rent one or get your hands on one. But my experience is I noticed when we went from 12 megapixels to 24 megapixels, like when I got the Nikon D800, it was a 36 megapixel camera originally, and that caused a lot of people problems. Just the movement of the shutter. Now I know that the Sony is a mirrorless, so you don't have that problem. But the point is, just the slap of what they call the shutter would cause the image to be a little not sharp. So just be careful with that, Gabe, and because it may be a little much. I don't know. More is not better. Here's the other problem: is with megapixels, you typically give up some ISO performance. It's just kind of inherent in the way. Now they're getting better, but the point is you don't get the same If you want to, like we're talking, because you're talking Sony, let's look at the A7S. I think it is. The A7S is, I think, a 12 megapixel camera. That thing, the ISO is unbelievable. It's like huge. You can just shoot in pitch dark practically with it. Well, with a 60 megapixel camera, the ISO is not nearly, it's good, but it's not nearly as good. So there's a sweet spot in there. And I think 24 to 30 megapixels is about what it's starting to end up to be. Okay. So good questions, by the way. Thanks very much. Okay, so Caitlin asks, can you recommend one lens for a beginner with a Nikon wanting to do maternity shoots? What would you suggest? Well, there's a lot of lenses you could get. First of all, photography is about solving problems. So whatever lens you have, you can use. If you have the kit lens, it comes to 1855 probably. There's nothing wrong with that lens. It's not a great lens. It's not a spectacular lens, but it will work. And again, especially if you're shooting in that sweet spot between, 5.6, f8, right around there, it's going to be a sharper than shooting it wide open or at f22, believe it or not. And but if I were going to buy a lens, I think everyone should have a 50 millimeter lens. It's just kind of something that belongs in your kit, no matter what you have, no matter what you shoot with. So a 50 millimeter. And the other thing is a 50 millimeter lens would be a prime. I got one here. What is this? This is it's a 50. So it's a 50. So it's a prime. It's a non-zoom lens. And so when that happens, you can see how small it is. There's less elements, and the quality of the elements are typically better, the glass elements. So therefore, a prime lens will, for the most part, always be sharper than a zoom lens, unless you get a really good zoom lens. Now, it used to be that primes were the only way to go, but nowadays the zooms have gotten so good that you can afford to get a zoom lens. But you're going to be spending $1,000 to $2,000 to get that kind of quality, in my opinion. So I would go with a 50 millimeter f1.8 to start with. And some people say, well, that's too long. Well, back up a little bit. And the reason I like a 50 is because the compression. It gives you a little bit of that compression of the facial features, which is more flattering. Some people will say, well, use a 35 millimeter. Well, the problem is a 35 millimeter is a crop sensor. On a crop sensor gives you a 50 millimeter field of view, but it doesn't give you the compression, doesn't give you the same look as a 50 millimeter does. So like for a full frame camera, my 85 millimeter is my favorite. That's kind of what my go-to portrait lens. And so this is almost the same focal length or field of view you would get with a 50 millimeter on a crop sensor. So anyway, that's my 2 cents. Hopefully that helps. Okay, next one is, what speed light do you recommend for a Nikon D750? Boy, that's, again, there's a lot to that question, although you may not know it or not. First of all, just for those of you who aren't familiar, a speed light is a term that refers to a light that typically goes on the camera. Now, the nice thing is you can take that off the camera and you can use it off camera. One of the reasons I recommend people start with a speed light is because it's battery powered. So you may not want to use it on the camera. You could, but I would suggest you move it off the camera. But the value is you could use it outdoors, indoors, anywhere, because it's battery powered. Now, the downside of that is it's battery powered, meaning, you have to have batteries. If you shoot it at 1-to-1 or full power, it's going to take a little longer to recycle. So it's always better to shoot at 1/4 power, 1/8 power if you can. You don't need that much light. So it'd be better to bump up the ISO just a little bit to be able to shoot at a lower power rating, because you're going to get faster recycle time. So having said that, if you went with the Nikon flash, I would go with the SB700. The SB700 is not the highest end. It's not the SB5000, but it's also not the low end. I think that's an SB500 if that's called. Anyway, the SB700 is a very good flash. It will do everything you want it to do. Now, here's kind of a caveat. If you want, I recommend a flash that will do high-speed sync. And what that means is, and again, I always hate this because I feel like I'm going down a rabbit hole. Okay, what you may have noticed is if on your most cameras, your flash will not sync at over somewhere between, like on the Canon, it's typically 1/60th of a second to 200th of a second. On the Nikon, it's typically 200th of a sec, 250th of a second. What happens is if you try to use the flash over that, off-camera flash, like even if it's a manual studio flash, you'll start to get a black bar across the image. And what's happening is as the shutter comes by, the flash goes off, and so you see that it's out of sync. Well, when you buy a flash that has high-speed sync, what happens is the radio system, typically I'm talking about off-camera flash, the radio system will send a signal to the flash when the shutter is open, and then the flash will go off. And actually what it does is it pulses. It goes off more than once. Generally, I think it's twice. So the shutter will open, it'll flash, because the shutter is kind of two parts. It's not just open and close. It's actually, there's two parts to the shutter. So what happens is when it opens, it fires, then it opens again, and it fires again. And the reason you want a flash that'll do high-speed sync, now the Nikon flash will do that on camera, but I don't believe it'll do it off camera. So because it uses an infrared system, I don't think it will go over 2/50th of a second, depending on the camera, especially if it's a D3400, D3500, 5600 in there. Maybe the higher end ones I think might do that. Anyway, the point is, if you want a flash that will do high-speed sync, and the reason is because then you can shoot at a higher shutter speed, and it's not so much you're going to use it to freeze action, but if you're shooting outdoors, the higher the shutter speed, the darker you can make the ambient light. Now, this gets into a whole big thing I explain to people in my lighting classes, but flash is not affected by shutter speed. People are like, what? That doesn't make sense. No, it's not. It's affected by ISO, and it's affected by aperture. Let's just take ISO out of it for a second. Let me use this analogy. Let's say, for example, that you're taking a picture of lightning outdoors at night. It's dark. Okay. So if I ask you, what is the shutter speed for lightning? What would you tell me? It's a trick question, by the way. There isn't one. Because the way it works is you open the shutter, it opens up, the lightning goes off, and then you close the shutter. Typically, you'd use the bulb mode. Hang on, Karen, I'll get to your question in just a second. Do you have it uses the bulb mode. So the reason is the same thing with the flash indoors or outdoors. So what happens though, if you use so you could be in a room completely pitch dark, and you could open that flash, the shutter open, leave it for a minute or 30 minutes. And if it's completely dark, and then pop the flash, and the exposure is going to be perfect. So what happens though when you're using flash in the real world outdoors is that you will use that higher shutter speed to darken the sky. So we've all seen a lot of these pictures where people have a blown out background, right? The exposure is fine on the family, but the background's blown out. Well, the reason is because it's called a contrast ratio. You can't control that. Well, if you expose for the highlights or you expose for the sky and then turn on your flash and power that up, then what will happen is you'll have a perfectly exposed picture. So I know I'm kind of getting off the rails here a little bit. I apologize. But if by having a flash that uses high-speed sync, it allows you to control that. You can do that. You can use that high-speed sync to darken the background and still use the flash to expose the foreground of the people or whatever. I use this technique all the time. I wish I don't have any examples here to show you, but anyway. So I again, sorry about that. Kind of got carried away. Again, a lot of these questions are not super simple. Okay, let's see what Karen wants. Karen wants to know, do I have any suggestions for marketing one's photography? I do portrait, landscape, would love to do product too. Ooh. Yeah, they're kind of different, obviously. And I can give you a couple of suggestions. There's a couple, they're kind of general suggestions, first of all. Product photography is going to be a whole nother genre of photography. So let's keep that separate for a second. If you're doing portraits and you're doing landscape, and again, landscape is kind of fine art, and that's not so let's just say portraiture, because that's really where your money's going to be. You're not going to make much money in marketing landscape photography. You could do it in portraiture and you can do it in product photography, but landscape is kind of an animal by itself. So if you're going to do portraiture, the first thing I tell people is, number one, never show any work that you don't want to get hired to shoot. So for example, I can shoot just about anything, frankly. I've been doing this long enough that it doesn't matter. So can you shoot this? I could say I probably could. I do product photography, I've done architectural photography, but my passion is photographing people. I love photography. So you'll find, if you go to my website, you'll find that most people have leelove.com. You'll see that it's all people on there, because that's what I want people to hire me to do. So you want to show the work you want to get hired to do. The next thing you need to be able to do is have a body of work, a portfolio. Now, the body of work doesn't have to be 100 pictures. It doesn't have to be 50 pictures. It can be 10 pictures, 5 pictures, 5 images. The thing is, you want it to be your best work. So you want to show off the kind of stuff you want to, number one, that you want to get hired to do. And number two, you want it to be your best work. The third thing you need to do is personal projects. So every photographer, and especially a commercial photographer like me, always has personal projects they're working on. And I could point you to some sites, if you message me, that show personal work that photographers have done. And what a personal project is something that you've come up with. So let me give you an example. So let's say you get hired to do a portrait of a business person, or maybe a family or something. Okay, that's great. That's on your portfolio. But that's the kind of work that the client hired you to do. That's what they want to do. Okay? A personal project is something that comes out of your head. So I love conceptual things. So like, for example, I'll come up with an idea. One of the images, I don't think it might be on my website here somewhere. I should probably bring this up and show you guys some this stuff, but I don't want to take time to do it now. I did some shots. Well, here, this is one right here. I guess I can show you. This is a personal project. Okay, so this is a project I did. This is a model I hired, and the young lady there is actually the makeup artist's daughter. And so I just had this picture in my head, and it was something I wanted to shoot. It was a lifestyle photo. This is lit, by the way, although it doesn't look like there's any lighting. This is a good example of where using lighting outdoors, even though most people don't think they need it. So, but the point is, this is a personal project. Might be another one on here. This is also a personal project. This is a friend of mine and her daughter, and we wanted to do this series. I sent this out to ad agencies, call under the name of Summer of Love, and that was the promotional piece. Got really good response from it. Anyway, it's not about me. I don't like showing my own work because I don't want people to think trying to do that. My point is, you want to be doing personal work. You want to have your own concepts and your own things of what you want to shoot. So for example, if you shoot something like this piece I did, I love doing this, okay? And then people, oh, we love what you did. Can you do that for us? Well, yeah, I did it for free because it was my own project. I certainly would do it to get hired. So my point is, only show the work you want to get hired to do. Number two, only show your best work. And number three, work on personal projects, things that you want to get hired to do, stuff you're ideal your ideal client. What would be your ideal client that you would want to get hired to do? Let's go to the product photography side for a second. Let's say you're doing product photography. Okay. Well, then start shooting some personal projects. You can do some stuff for some friends or some other businesses if you want, but also you could do your own, conceptual things you did with a product that would be something that you would want to shoot, and then put those in your portfolio. Now, here's why this is important. I've met with many, many art directors and creative directors at ad agencies. That's my ideal client. Okay. When I show them my work in what's called a book, a portfolio, they will typically start going through it, and they'll look at, a thing I did for Audi maybe, or Stanley Martin, or whoever it may be. And then every time they will stop on a personal project, and they'll look at it and they'll say, tell me about this one. And the reason they're doing that is because they recognize that it's not like the rest or the other body of work. And they realize that it's something that you shot for yourself. And why they want to know that is because they want to know how you would come up with a concept for their ad campaign or for their client. We all want to get hired for our own creativity. Okay. And that's what you're trying to do. You're trying to get to a point where your clients are hiring you because of the way you see. And by doing a personal project, that means you're developing a project that has your vision that you came up with. It wasn't a client telling you what they wanted or didn't want. It's something that you came up with. And that's why personal projects are so important for every photographer. I do client work to pay the bills, but I shoot personal projects to get my creativity going, my creative juices, and to work on ideas and experiment with things that I come up with that I want to try. And so personal projects are critical for any photographer. And that would be the other thing I would tell you to do, is to work on a personal project. And yeah, James said he was there. James was helping me on that shoot I just showed you with can't think of her. I'm gone blank on her name right now. I know what it is. I can think of her last name. I can't think of her first name for some reason. Anyway, for the model that we hired. So anyway, it was the hottest day of the year, by the way. I might tell you, it was awful. Anyway, so that I don't know if that answers your question or not. Whoops. Karen, or not, but that's part of the things I would tell you to do is those three things. There's a whole bunch I could tell you and work with if you want to get with me, and I'll be glad to help you out. But those are the three things that I think a lot of people miss, and then the marketing part, the real marketing part, is different than in how you actually get that work in front of people. If I was going to add a fourth item, it would be have your own website. I don't know what kind of work you're doing, but it's okay to post things on Facebook, but you want your own space. You want some place that has your name, your company name, your email associated with it. And you don't want to be, that way you can have total control of it. So I see a lot of people putting their portfolios on. I think one of the questions actually comes up close about putting images on Facebook, and it's fine, but then you're at the, the whim of these guys, and you never know what's going to happen. So I hope that helped. Okay, so let's go. So, all right. So Alexis says, does anyone have a Nikon 105 or a Tamron 90mm? Looking for a good macro lens. Which do you prefer? Either one of those is great. I do have the Nikon 105, which I end up lending to more people than I end up shooting myself, because I don't do any only macro work I do is product photography. But it does make a good portrait lens. It's really, really sharp, unfortunately. I say unfortunately, it's probably one of the sharpest lenses you'll get, which can be a little bit too sharp for portraits. That's what I mean by unfortunately. But I would say the Nikon 105 or the Tamron 90 or the Sigma 105 are all excellent choices. They're all really good lenses. They're very sharp. And what you're looking for in a lens like that, not only just the sharpness, but you're looking at the difference in a macro lens and any other lens has to do with the minimum focusing distance. So what happens is on most lenses, even the 50mm lens, it'll only focus at a certain distance, which means you can't get the subject to be large enough. If you're trying to photograph a penny, for example, then and the lens has to be 12 inches away, then the penny is going to be too small in the frame. Well, the thing about a macro lens is it lets you focus right within a few inches, and therefore you get a greater magnification. So my other thing, and it's also the prime lenses, meaning non-focus lenses. So you typically are moving the lens in and out and getting the distance to focus. Not you'll get close with the focusing ring, but you end up moving the camera itself to get the focus exactly right. The depth of field is very, very shallow in macro photography, and that there's a whole bunch of techniques you can use to do that. But any of those lenses will work. So I would say just try one out, see what you think. Look, it depends on your budget. I think they're all right around, I think, $1,000. I think the Nikkor is about 900 or something, and I think the Tamron is a little bit less, but not. And the Sigma is close to that as well. So I believe they are. It's been a while. So, but the macro lenses are great. Oh, one thing I want to mention: I would avoid a lens that has like a zoom lens that has macro capability, and the reason is, they will work. They're fine. And what they do is they add elements in there. The way they work is they add elements in there so that the minimum focusing distance is shorter, but they still don't give you the one-to-one magnification that you would typically get out of a macro lens. And also they are not quite as sharp generally because they're general purpose lenses and they have macro feature added to them, which lets them get a little closer focusing. So, okay. Well, thank you. I think this is, here's my buddy. Is this, is that you? I think that's Steven. I think Steven has, thanks, Steven. I appreciate that. I saw you were going to join us tonight. And, yeah, it's, my collection of old stuff, not to be confused with myself, but, there's a whole bunch of, I should do a tour sometime, but old cameras, old film cameras. There's a 4x5 film camera back there, some movie stuff back there. And so the only probably new part would be this right here, which is my chip chart, which I calibrate my white balance with for video every time I shoot. And then my other Panasonic 4K video. Anyway, nice seeing you tonight. Thanks very much for joining us. Okay. All right. So, Michelle asks, when I import photo to Lightroom, it automatically adjusts the image. Then the image changes and doesn't look as good as the initial image. Yeah, Stephen, I thought that was you. I didn't recognize the career watch. I wasn't sure. Yes. So, okay. So here's what happens. And by the way, Stephen, not to get off the subject, but, I figure, I'm an instructor. I'm a teacher. I teach lighting. I teach photography. If I couldn't come up with my own, lighting setup that looked halfway decent, then I didn't deserve to be teaching people. So that's the whole deal. It took me a little while to get it tweaked. And I got a few more things I'm going to be doing here this week. So I'm never satisfied. I'm always changing. Anyway, sorry about that. Derailed that question. So when they import the images, maybe you guys have noticed this. So when you import an image, especially a raw image, of course, into Lightroom, all of a sudden it looks really good, and then it pops, and all of a sudden it looks bad. And you're like, what the hell happened? It will look great there for a minute, and now the picture's lousy. Here's what's going on. And I saw a lot of people posting on this, and their answers were not accurate, which doesn't surprise me. But anyway. What happens is that every raw image has embedded in it a small JPEG. And those JPEG, because otherwise you couldn't look at the back, if you look in the back of your camera, you're shooting raw, how would you be able to view the image? Because a raw image is not an image. A raw file is not an image, it's data. In fact, I'm getting ready to release on the Facebook group a video I've been working on here, a short video on the differences between JPEG and RAW. But the point is that what happens is, so when you load it into Lightroom, it pops up with this JPEG. And so what you're seeing are this settings out of the camera. So if you have your camera set to, sharpen or vivid or whatever contrast bump up, those are embedded in the JPEG of the even in the RAW file. Then what happens is Lightroom reads the RAW file, it gives it time to import it, read it, and creates a preview file. The preview file is actually a copy of the RAW settings, and that's what you're viewing when it pops. And that's why, hey, Sue Ann, and that's why it was, why it looks weird. So what happens is, the first thing that happens is it comes in. I've had this complaint from many people I've taught Lightroom to, and they're like, oh, it looks great, and then all of a sudden it's a lousy looking picture. So what happens is it's reading the JPEG that's embedded in the RAW file. Then it reads the RAW file, and then it shows you the RAW file. So here's what you need to do to fix this. It's a tech. Now, the term is, I call it learning the file. I don't know what it's really called. But so what I do is, I've determined that every camera I own, the RAW files are different. Doesn't matter if you're shooting in a D850 versus a D810 versus a Canon 5D Mark IV. They all are a little bit different. And so what happens is, you have to learn the look you're going for on that RAW file. And so if you make it, and I just think I went over this in the workshop that we did on Lightroom a couple weeks ago. You should have been there if you missed it. It's free. Anyway, what happens is, once you learn that file, you start making adjustments to it, and you'll find, you know what? Like, for example, when I went from 12 megapixels to 36 megapixels, I found out that I had to sharpen the file even more than I did before. It's like, what? I didn't think I thought that was kind of goes back to the resolution question. And the reason is, there's so many megapixels there, and the image is so dense that you have to sharpen it more. Well, so that's called learning the file. So I found out that camera had to have more sharpening. Then I found that I need to maybe bump up the contrast just a little bit, or adjust something. I'm not talking about white balance or exposure, but everything else you kind of have to get to tweak. So what happens is, over a period of time, a week or two or a couple of weeks, you'll start to learn what is the best setting for that particular camera. So then you store that as a preset. Now, you don't store the exposure, and you do not store the white balance in the preset. You store everything else, okay? Not cropping and things like that, but the main adjustments. Now, when you import the next batch of images, one of the options is to go in and say, under the develop settings, select preset. Then what you do is, you set the preset for that camera. It's like an import preset. So we'll call Nikon D850. So you select D850, and then what happens is, as it's importing those images, it will automatically move the sliders around on Lightroom to match that look that you're going for, that you've what called learning the file that you've come up with. And so now, when it converts them to the raw to a preview, they will look the way that they're going to look. And it also saves you a huge amount of time, because now you're not having to adjust everything. You don't only really may need to crop. You might need to tweak the white balance, and may need to tweak the exposure, but for the most part, everything else is pretty close. So that's the trick to what's going on with RAW files when you're importing them, and why they look great at first, and then all of a sudden they look bad. And that's because most people don't understand that RAW files purposely are supposed to look bad. They're not supposed to look bad, but the point is, RAW files are flat. They're not supposed to have any set. In other words, they're not sharpened on purpose. They don't have any color or saturation. Any of that is purposely zero. You don't want the camera making those adjustments. You want to make those adjustments. That's the whole value of shooting RAW. In the video world, you shoot RAW. You apply what's called a LUT to it, a lookup table, and you apply that color grading to it. It's the same thing when you're shooting a RAW file in photography. So you want that file to look flat, because that gives you the maximum adjustment or the maximum capability of adjusting that file to the way you want it to look. So it's supposed to look that way, I guess is the point, Michelle. So, okay. All right, so I hope that answers. As usual, I've given a long answer to a very short question, but look, I want you guys to understand how this stuff works. I don't want to just give you an answer, yes or no. You can find that anywhere. If you don't understand the background of how this stuff works and have some understanding, then you're never going to learn, and you don't know what to do when there's a problem. And that's why I go to some of these, go into this detail. I don't want you, it's not about boring you. It's not about trying to show you how much I know. It's about trying to give you some experience or to understand why things work the way they do. It's easy to give you the answer. Do this, do that. I can do that. That's easy. We could have a 10-minute show. Okay, but what I want to do is give you the background and the experience, my experience of how to solve a problem. Now, I know I've said this before, and I know this is a little bit of a rant here in the middle, but photography has a lot to do with solving problems, especially in my job as a commercial photographer. I could tell you story after story of where things went wrong on set. Something didn't work, somebody didn't show up, something broke, the client changed their what they wanted to do. My job is to fix that. Okay, that's what I do. That's what I get paid to do. If something doesn't work, my job is to figure out how to make something else do the job without the client knowing about it or without them worrying about it. That's the job of a photographer. People don't come to us to take pretty pictures. And they don't come to us because we have nice cameras. They come to us for two reasons. One, because of our vision, hopefully, and our creativity and the way we see the world. Ideally, that's exactly what you want them. And number two, because you can solve a problem. Meaning, they tried to take the picture with their iPhone and it didn't come out right. Why is that? Because they didn't know how to solve the problem. You should know how to solve the problem. So, anyway, don't mean to get off on that, but it's a sticky point for me. And why I educate you or try to educate you guys on what's going on behind the scenes and how to solve the problem and why the problem exists, not just give you an answer. So anyway, sorry about that. While we're at it, while we're doing a quick commercial break here, let me also mention to you guys about the Facebook page. If you guys are not familiar, we have a Facebook group. And that is, it's Photo Mentor TV is a Facebook. It's a closed group. And I answer questions in there a little more in depth. I post some videos. I'm going to be doing some interviews and some things. It's not the same content that you're watching here on the public site. But it is a little different. It's not the same kind of group that you're going to find these other people that are providing. And the reason is because, number one, I only allow people in here who are helpful. I don't want people that are going to help you. I don't want people there to demean you or be mean or give you, a link to YouTube. That does no one any good. So the purpose of this group is to be helpful, encouraging, educate you, and mentor you. And that's the whole idea. So it's a small group. I think we have about 100 and some people in there right now. It's growing, which is fine, but I'm not interested in having a group that's 10,000 people. I'm interested in having a group that has a number of people that we can help individually and give them solid advice. So if you're interested in that kind of group, then what I would encourage you to do is go to photomentor.tv/join. What that will do is take you to a quick questionnaire. Just simple. I think there's 3 questions on there. How long you've been shooting, what are your biggest problems, and your name and email address. And also, I think it asks for your Facebook name so I can check your page out. Anyway, so that's the deal on that. And I would, and if you're interested, we'd love to have you over there. It's a great group of people. Everybody's very caring and very helpful. And I'm very thrilled about that. That's the way it's growing. So anyway, all right, back to regular programming. All right, so let's go to our next question here. So let's see. All right, so this is an interesting one. I love this question. Another photographer in my town is messaging my clients, saying that if they ever need a photographer to let her know. What's your opinion? I call the mob. Take her out. No, how you doing? No, All right. So first of all, the answer is be professional. Okay. The second answer is take the high road. Don't get all upset about it. Don't go, ballistic about it. Don't threaten them. Don't do any of that kind of stuff. It's not worth it. Your reputation is more important. Okay. The other thing is, if you wanted to approach her, you could, but I wouldn't even do that myself. Here's the approach I would take. Competition is a good thing. It motivates us. I would use this as a way to motivate yourself. What can you do better for your clients? How can you reach out to your clients more often? How can you keep your name in front of your clients more often? Karen was asking about marketing. This is a really good way to market. So if somebody's trying, first of all, it tells me they're desperate. If this person can't get their own clients, what are they? They're trying to, snake clients away from you. That means they're not getting any clients. So their work's probably not very good. And of course, it's not just about the work, but so I would say this. If I were you, my thing would be, okay, if she's reaching out, then I need to do that as well. And what I would do though is I would do a handwritten note. If you have their information or find that information, send them a handwritten note thanking them or just checking on how they're doing. If you have a promotional piece that you're doing, hey, I don't know what kind of work you're doing. You didn't really mention it, but let's just say it's portraits and families and things like that. Let them know you've got a promotion coming up or you've got something you want to do something special, or ask them if they have a referral. Hey, listen, I really enjoyed working with you. If you have anybody that you want, a friend of yours you think would need some work, be sure and let me know. And I'll, you can, if you want to do some kind of a discount toward another shoot for them or something else, whatever. The point is you want to have an excuse. I'd say excuse. You want to have a reason to reach out to them. And you want to use that to keep your relationship with your customer going. That's the real trick there. It's not about there's always going to be somebody out there trying to take your work. I mean, especially the more popular you get, the longer you've been doing it, the better you become. Everyone's going to be targeting, shooting for that. Look, Apple, for example, let's pick on them. Okay. They're the number one. Everybody's after them. Google, everybody wants to knock them off the pedestal, right? Why? Because they've got a huge market share. Facebook, whoever, when you pick any industry, and you're going to find that's the case. So you should be upping your game, in my opinion, and do a better job. That will ultimately grow your business and keep better satisfied customers. So that's the answer I would use on that. I gotta show you James's answer. The Italian comes out. Hey, I can't help it. What can I say? Gonna break your knees. That's right. I'll have James come over there and he'll take care of you. He's a little guy, but he's Italian and he's mean. And so we'll get Dante, right, James? So that's funny. Anyway, so yeah, that worked in the old days. It doesn't work anymore. You want to be professional, above board, and you want to use that to motivate you to improve your services, in my opinion. So that's the way I would go. All right, let's see what else we got here. Okay, so Tabitha, I got only a couple questions I think left here. So Tabitha says, I'm trying to post pictures from my shoot on my photography page on Facebook, by the way. It's not mentioned here. I should mention, you guys, sometimes I rephrase these things a little bit, these questions you guys send me or that I get, because, they're either not quite right, they're too long, whatever. So anyway, but it keeps messing up the order of my pictures. What do I do? Well, first of all, this goes back a little bit to what I don't know the answer. Didn't have the ability to ask her, is she using Facebook to show off her portfolio for her clients? If that's the case, that's not what I would be doing. It's just when I went back earlier, I'd say you need your own web page. You should be using, I guess Pixieset is a real popular system. I've never used it. Squarespace is another good one. So I would have my own website that you can control and you can order and you can put what other images up there you want. You can put them in whatever categories you want and put them the way you think they should be, not the way Facebook thinks they should be. The other thing is, I don't know how Facebook works, but I'd take a guess and I would say, try this, Tabitha. Put a number in front of each image and see if they number them alphabetically or sequentially. If that doesn't work, they may list them by date, by the timestamp on them. There's something that they're looking at there to order those, and I guess it's either the name or the date. I mean, and the date may be the same, but the timestamp may be different. So that may be what's causing them to reorder them. But I would definitely look at having my own website for something like this for your own portfolio. And, you know, you just can't depend on these guys. You never know what's going to happen, especially not to get political, but look what's going on with all these people getting banned and their sites getting turned down. You never know. I mean, your site, for whatever reason, you may make an innocent mistake and all of a sudden your accounts gets shut off. So therefore, you want something you can control yourself. And especially if you're doing this as a business, you want your own website and your own domain. So anyway, I won't go into any more detail on that, but that's the deal on that. Okay. Only got a couple more. I can't upload images to my SD. Help. Well, there's two things to look for. This happens to everyone. First thing is, if you put it in a card reader, I recommend everybody use a card reader. You can connect a cable to your camera, but I don't recommend it as your first line of defense there. First thing is, put it in a card reader. Does the computer see the card? If the card shows up and you don't see any images, that's a good sign. Okay, that's the first thing. The second thing is there is software you can run that will recover the images if they're deleted or missing. But I believe what Lindsay said was when she put the images put the card in the camera, she could see them. So here's a problem. I don't know if this is your problem, Lindsay, but here's a problem I've seen before. Some cameras, when you shoot enough images, they roll over and it creates another folder, a different folder name. In fact, there's a way to actually set this up in your camera to tell it what this folder structure is going to be. So what will happen sometimes is your computer doesn't see that second folder. I doubt that's the problem, but it could be. It's worth looking at. But if that's not the problem, then I would connect a USB cable, because you can see them on the camera. Connect a USB cable to your computer and to the camera, and then see if you can download them off of the card that way. That's probably will work for you. But the recovery software should work if it can be seen. But my guess is this would be the easiest way without purchasing any recovery software. I covered that in an episode back about what recovery software that I recommended. So anyway, that's usually the deal with something like that. Other thing is, when you get the images off, you've got them, either quit using that card, or what I always make sure is when you put a card in your computer, or in your camera for the first time, always format the card in the camera. Use the camera's formatting. Do not delete images off the card using the computer. I don't even like to delete images off the camera itself. But I'll just, even if they're bad, I'll upload them, import them, and then I'll delete them once I've got them imported onto the hard drive. But the thing is, you want to make sure you format your card every single time before you use it, and never delete them from using the computer. Take the card back out when you're done, make sure their images are there, put it in the camera, then format it in the camera, and that will eliminate a lot of problems. I rarely have any problems anymore once I started doing that many, many years ago. All right, let's get moving here. We're running out of time. All right, so this is the last question of the evening, I believe, unless you guys have anything else. About 95% of my photos are never edited. I like people to see exactly what I have seen. Any thoughts on that? Well, I should have started with this one, because this is a question I have a lot of thoughts on. First of all, I don't agree with this, okay? Now, don't get me wrong. I think it's great. If that's what you want, that's your style, that's what you want to provide, then I'm not saying it's wrong. I'm just saying I don't agree with that for myself, and I don't agree with most people. And here's why. It's not that it has anything to do with whether you're seeing the images coming out of the camera. The issue is you're letting the camera make the decision. First of all, let me back up a second. Every decision you make, Wayne, affects the image. You're not a photocopier. If you're a photocopier, then you can just put a security camera out there, take a picture, and give it to somebody and say, okay, there you go. I'm a photographer. So you're not a photocopier. Every decision you make, every tool you use is your interpretation. As an artist, hopefully, that's what you're trying to do. So therefore, the lens you pick, where you stand, the focal length, the aperture, the ISO, all of those things are your interpretation. You're not showing anybody what you've seen. What you're doing is you're just giving them, you're just making a decision and you're showing them the decisions you made. And also, I think this is great. James, this is something I think James is trying to point out here. James is saying, whoops, wrong one. James is saying, if they're shooting JPEG, then the camera's making the edit. Exactly. So there's a bunch of settings most people don't realize in your camera. Contrast, sharpening, vivid, all kinds of things you can set in the camera. And if that's a JPEG, then you're letting the camera make those decisions. You're not even making that decision. So you already are editing the pictures. You just don't know it. The second thing is, I think that now let me back up. Getting it as close as possible in camera, I'm all about that. That's part of your skill. That's part of learning the craft. You should get it right, okay, in camera. I'm not talking about using post-processing to fix problems, okay? We do that, of course, but the point is you want to get away from that. You want to get it as close as possible in camera. So that's the second thing. The third thing is, though, is I see the post-processing as the lab. That's where I bring my images to life. In fact, my technique, if possible, depending on the client, is when I import a card, I won't even look at the images for about a week. I'll import them. I'll look at them. Okay, did they get transferred to the hard drive? Great. Then I put the card aside. I won't use it for a while. And then about a week later, I'll go back, and that's when I like to do my editing. And what I find for my technique is I have a much better perspective of the images when I look that way. When I look at them a week later, it's a much different perspective than right after I shot them. When I just came back from a shoot, I find that my perspective's different. I'm too close to the images. I'm thinking, oh, wow, I had to do this, I had to do that. The guy got in my way. The sun was in my eyes. Excuse me. Apologize. The sun was in my eyes, and so therefore I'm too close to the image. So a week later, my perspective is completely different on those images. The next thing is I don't know in the field always what I want that image to say. I have some feelings. I'm looking, it's raining, it's not raining, it's sunny, it's cold, whatever. Maybe my perspective is skewed in the field. Maybe there are a lot of times I miss things in a shoot, you know. I'll be shooting with a client and stuff, boom, boom. That's why I like having a producer or somebody work with me, or a makeup artist. They'll look, oh, hang on, their tie's crooked. Sometimes, I know we've all done this, you'll forget. You won't notice what's going on. So when I'm in the moment, so to speak, I may not actually see what's really going on. But when I get back and I look at these images later on, I now can look at it and go, you know, I really want the motion I'm trying to develop there is really a warm one. I kind of want to maybe change the color temperature a little bit, boost it, you know, maybe make it a little warmer. You know, the cropping, I didn't really crop that right. I didn't notice there was something over here. Kind of need to crop that a little bit and kind of fix it. So I'm trying to bring this image to convey what I want to say as an artist. And so therefore, the post-processing is the 50% of the equation, in my opinion. It's not something that we should be afraid of, something that we should embrace as an artist, not as a way to fix the problem. I don't know if that's what Wayne is trying to imply, that he's saying that everybody's using it to fix the problem. And the last thing I'll tell you, well, there's two things. One thing is images have been manipulated since the beginning of time. I could show you, I meant to pull some up tonight. I could show you images that have been manipulated. And these, we're talking Civil War images, things right back in those time frames. Right in the beginning of photography, things were shots where we've added people, removed people, things like that, that were not in that shot or were in the shot originally. So it just doesn't make sense to me not to process the images as an artist. So, and maybe this is an analogy, and it would be like, would you want an author to sell you an unfinished manuscript? I wouldn't. I want them to develop that character. I want them to come up with, work through and make it the best possible story they can. Would I want a musician to give me an album, a song that was unfinished or that had bad tracks on it, or they were just messing around? No, I want that to be what their final product. As an artist, I want them to give me that as what they want the world to hear. Okay. And it's the same thing with my work. I want my work to represent my vision, and you should feel the same way. And so when we were shooting film, the lab did that. The lab, depending on what paper they printed it on, that made a difference. What their chemicals they used, that made a difference. What film you use, color, black and white, Ektachrome, in other words, slide film, print film, Fuji versus Kodak, all those decisions had an impact on what that image looked like. So I think it's a myth, Wayne, that, if you're trying to say there's some kind of purity in this, then I would disagree. And if you're just using it as your style, that's fine. I agree with that. I think that's what you should do. But even Ansel Adams has a really famous quote I love to use, and that is, it goes something like this. I'll paraphrase it. That the negative is the score, equivalent to a musician's score, and the print is equivalent to the musician's performance. So capturing the image on the negative, on a digital negative as well, is really just writing the score down. It's not music until it's performed. And that's what he's trying to say there, is that the printing, or in his case, is the final performance. And if you're just giving him something out of the camera, then I think you're neglecting the final performance. If you study his work, Ansel Adams' work, you'll find that there's an image, one of his most famous images called Moon over Hernandez, was printed differently over the years. There's a book out that shows all the different versions over the years that he printed, and it's not the same print. It's a very thin negative, meaning it was very underexposed. And so because he just had one frame he got with it, he didn't even know what the exposure was. He just took a guess. And so over the years, he's printed that print very different times every year as he learned more and as he worked with it. So anyway, I'll leave it at that. So again, sorry I went a little long, but I appreciate you guys hanging in there with me. And so, we'll do this again. We do this again every Friday, again at 9 p.m. Eastern Time, 6 p.m. Pacific. And you can check us out on Facebook or YouTube. I'll mention one last thing here, that if you, on the first Friday of the month, I do photo reviews. If you're interested in having some of your work looked at and give you some feedback on it, the first Friday of the month is when we do that. The reviews are all anonymous, meaning that, I know who you are, but I won't use your name or anything like that. What I do like to know is how long you've been shooting, so it kind of gives me some any kind of camera or experience is welcome, even a smartphone, no big deal. The images are reviewed on composition, technical, and subject matter. They're not really reviewed on whether I like them or not. And if you're interested, go to review.photomentor.tv, and you can upload your image or images there. And it'd be great. Love to have you join us. So again, thanks again. Everyone have a good evening, and see you next week.